The rain soaked through Muna's shoes as she stood outside the gate of the house she'd called home for 27 years. Clutched in her hand was a receipt, $18,000 worth of hospital bills. She had drained her savings, skipped meals, sold her jewelry, all to keep her parents alive when no one else showed up. But today, as their precious son Juba returned from abroad, her mother had simply said, "You've done enough. Go stay somewhere else. Your brother needs space." That night, Muna didn't just walk away. She began a plan to show them what a real daughter looks like. Muna was the kind of daughter every parent should be proud of, but no one ever noticed her. From a young age, she did everything in the house, cooking meals, washing clothes, and making sure the bills were paid on time. When her father fell seriously ill, Muna didn't think twice. She gave up her dream of going to university just to stay home and take care of him. While other girls her age were building their future, Muna was holding her family together with both hands. She never complained. She never asked for anything in return. Day and night, she cared for her parents, thinking that maybe one day they would see how much she loved them. Maybe one day they would say, "Thank you." But that day never came. Her parents never praised her, never showed her love the way they did for her younger brother. Still, Muna kept going, quietly hoping that her sacrifices would matter to them one day. Juba came back from Dubai like a star. He wore shiny sunglasses, walked like someone very important, and spoke with pride in every word. He hadn't called once when their father was sick, not even a single visit, not a single message asking how things were going. But the moment he stepped into the house, everything changed. Their parents ran to hug him, smiling wide, like they had just seen a miracle. They acted like he had returned from war, not from a job abroad. Muna stood in the corner, watching. The same parents who barely noticed her now couldn't stop praising him. Within just a few hours, Juba was already being treated like royalty. Their mother said, "He must be tired. He's had a long flight." Then came the worst part. She looked at Muna and said, "Please help him settle into your room. He needs peace." Muna's heart sank. That room wasn't just any room. It was hers, the one close to her father's monitor, the one where she stayed up many nights watching over him, making sure he was breathing okay, where she cried silently and prayed for him to live. But none of that mattered anymore, because Juba was home. They moved Muna's things out without even asking her, folded her clothes like she was just a guest, her favorite blanket, her books, her pillow, all packed away. Juba threw his bag on the bed like he owned the place. He didn't even thank her. He acted like everything belonged to him. Muna stood by, feeling small, like she didn't exist. She didn't fight. She didn't scream. But something inside her started to shift. After everything she had done, after all the nights she stayed awake, skipped meals, and gave up her dreams, they still made her feel like she was less important. All because Juba had returned. He brought no help, no comfort, no kindness, just his pride. But somehow, that was enough for their parents to forget the daughter who had been there every single day. That night, Muna sat alone in the hallway, her old bedsheets in her lap, and a quiet thought in her heart. Maybe they will never see me for who I truly am. One quiet afternoon, Muna was in the kitchen making tea for her father when her mother called her outside. Her voice was soft, too soft, like she was hiding something. Muna wiped her hands and followed her, not expecting anything unusual. But what she saw made her heart drop. Her bag, with her folded clothes inside, was sitting quietly on the veranda, as if waiting for her to take it and leave. She looked at her mother, confused. Her mother placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and said, "You've done so much for us. Maybe it's time you find your own life." There was no emotion in her voice, no warmth, no thank you, no hug, not even a tear. It was like she was giving away an old chair, not sending away the daughter who had kept the whole house together. Muna stood frozen. Her eyes moved from the bag to her mother's face. She was hoping for a sign that maybe this was a joke, a mistake, but nothing changed. Her mother didn't explain. She didn't even look sad. In that moment, Muna realized they were not asking her. They were telling her she was no longer needed. Juba had come back, and suddenly there was no space for her anymore. She didn't cry, not there. Not in front of the woman who had raised her, then pushed her away like she was a stranger. Slowly, she picked up her bag, hugged herself tighter, and looked around at the house she had cared for with so much love. Every corner had a memory. The floors she cleaned, the kitchen she cooked in, the chair where her father rested, the bed she gave up, but none of it belonged to her now. She didn't shout, she didn't slam the door, she didn't ask why, because deep inside she already knew the answer. In this house, love had conditions, value had a name, and it wasn't Muna. As she stepped out of the gate, the sky was grey, and a soft wind blew through her hair. She paused, turned back once, and whispered, "You'll remember this silence." Then she walked away, not with anger, but with something stronger, quiet strength. Her heart was broken, yes, but not bitter. She knew she deserved better, even if they couldn't see it. And though they had shut the door on her, life had just opened a new one, and this time, it would have her name on it. Muna didn't have many places to go after leaving her parents' house. She called her close friend Lara, who didn't ask too many questions. She just said, "Come." And for 2 nights, Muna slept on Lara's small living room sofa, using her bag as a pillow. She stayed quiet, tried not to be a burden, and spent hours thinking about what to do next. The pain from her parents' rejection was still fresh, but she knew she couldn't sit and cry forever. She needed to move forward. On the 3rd morning, while scrolling through her phone, she saw a job posting. A small logistics company was looking for a ground operations manager, someone who could organize schedules, manage deliveries, and solve real problems on the ground. Most people would have skipped it. Muna didn't have a degree, but what she did have was experience, the kind that came from managing hospital visits, medicines, appointments, and bills, all while handling a household. She opened the spreadsheet she had created for her father's medical care, the one where she had tracked every doctor's appointment, every medicine, every rupee spent, and every deadline. She cleaned it up, turned it into a sample of her skills, and attached it to her application. With a deep breath, she clicked send. 2 days later, her phone rang. It was the company. They wanted to meet her. She wore borrowed clothes, tied her hair neatly, and walked into that office with calm confidence. She didn't talk about her pain. She talked about her process, how she handled pressure, how she made systems work. The manager was impressed. Muna got the job. From day one, she gave it everything. She worked harder than anyone else, stayed late, solved problems before they even happened, and slowly started building trust in the office. Her spreadsheet systems helped the team avoid delays. Her calm thinking helped them manage chaos during peak hours. She wasn't loud, but her results spoke for her. Within 1 month, her boss called her into the office and said, "You're not just good, you're essential." She was promoted to senior ground manager. Her salary tripled. She moved out of her friend's apartment and into a small flat of her own. It wasn't fancy, but it had something special. Peace. Her own bed, her own key, her own space. The days of sleeping on a sofa were gone. Muna had stepped out of a broken home and walked straight into a brighter future. And this time, she wasn't going to wait for anyone to see her worth. She had already proved it to herself. Less than a year after sleeping on her friend's sofa, Muna's life looked completely different. She was no longer the quiet girl people ignored. She had become the woman every employee in the office respected. Her ideas were sharp, her plans were smart, and her work spoke louder than any words ever could. The company was growing fast, and Muna was one of the reasons behind its success. She had taken time to study every route the company trucks used, every stop, every delay, every extra cost. She watched everything closely. Then she started changing things. She cut out wasteful trips, organized smarter schedules, and made the whole transport system faster and cheaper. In just 6 months, her plan saved the company over $2 million. The boss was shocked, the team was proud, and everyone started asking, "Who is Muna?" Soon, her story reached the local news. And then, something big happened. A famous magazine called Women Who Lead wanted to feature her. They had heard about a young woman who rose from nothing and helped save a growing business with just her brain and hard work. When the magazine team came to interview her, Muna wore a simple white blouse. With her hair tied neatly back, she was calm, polite, and honest. They asked her about her past, about how she started with no degree, no support, and no home. They asked her how she stayed strong when life pushed her out. Muna didn't say much. She just smiled and said, "Being discarded is powerful fuel." That one line stayed in the minds of everyone who read the article. The magazine came out a week later, and Muna's face was on the front page. She stood tall, looking straight at the camera, confident, clear, and calm. Her friends called her, old classmates messaged her. Even people in her office were surprised and proud. But Muna didn't let the fame change her. She still reached work early, still carried her notebook, still helped others when they were stuck. But deep in her heart, something had healed. For the first time in her life, she was being seen, not for being someone's daughter, not for being someone's sister, but for being Muna, strong, smart, and unstoppable. And this time, the whole world knew it. While Muna's life was rising higher each day, things at her old home started to fall apart slowly. At first, no one said anything, but cracks were showing behind the scenes. Juba, their golden son, had invested a large sum of money in cryptocurrency, hoping it would double fast. But instead of profit, he lost almost everything. The fancy lifestyle he showed off was now just fake smiles and growing stress. Bills began to pile up. The house they all lived in was still under a loan, and now the payments were late. Letters from the bank arrived, warning of legal action. The clinic where their father had surgery also started calling, asking about the money still owed for treatment. But this time, Muna wasn't there to answer those calls, to take care of the mess, to fix what others broke. Even with all this happening, her parents didn't call her. Not a single message, not one word. They stayed silent, maybe out of shame, maybe out of pride. But deep inside that house, the silence was louder than ever, especially in her old bedroom, the room where she once sat by her father's bedside, the room where she prayed, cried, and gave everything she had. That room used to be full of care. Now it stood empty, cold, and quiet. Her mother walked past that door daily, but now it reminded her of what they had lost. Not just a daughter, but a lifeline. The things they once ignored now started to matter. The meals didn't taste the same without Muna. The house felt messy. There was no one to calm arguments, no one to hold things together. Juba had no answers, no money, no plan. He had returned with pride, but now he sat in the same house, feeling useless. The parents who once praised him were now worried, confused, and slowly beginning to realize the truth. The one they sent away was the one who had always held them up, but they stayed quiet. Maybe they didn't know how to ask for help. Maybe they were too afraid to face her. Whatever the reason, they didn't call. But Muna could feel it. She didn't need a message to know. Somewhere deep inside, she knew the house she once built with love and sacrifice was now falling apart without her. And this time, no one could stop the cracks from spreading. It was a normal Thursday morning. Muna was in her office, reviewing documents and preparing for a team meeting. The sun was bright, and her day was going smoothly, until the receptionist walked in and said, "There are 2 people here asking to see you. They say they're your parents." Muna froze for a second. Her pen slipped from her hand. She hadn't heard from them in months. Slowly she stood up and walked toward the front lobby, and there they were. Her mother, looking tired and older than she remembered. Her father thin and leaning on her mother's arm for support. Both looked out of place, unsure, nervous, almost ashamed. They didn't say much at first. Her mother's eyes filled with tears, and she gently squeezed her husband's hand. Then in a soft, broken voice, she said, "We didn't know who else to turn to." That sentence hit Muna hard. So much had happened between them, yet here they stood, hoping she would help. They told her the truth. Juba had left. He couldn't handle the stress and disappeared without telling anyone. The bank had sent a final notice. The house was about to be taken. Their home, the one Muna had cleaned, cared for, and even sacrificed her future for, was now just days away from being auctioned off. The unpaid medical bills had also returned. The clinic had stopped answering their calls. There was no one left, no backup, no plan, just fear. Muna looked at her parents quietly. She remembered everything. The night they asked her to leave, the bag on the veranda, the silence that followed. Part of her wanted to turn away, to remind them of how they made her feel invisible, but she didn't. She had already grown past that pain. Now, she was stronger, wiser, and more clear about who she was. She asked them to sit down. Her assistant brought water. She didn't raise her voice or ask, "Why now?" She just listened. And for the first time in her life, her parents looked at her not as a helper or background figure, but as their only hope. That moment said everything. The daughter they once pushed aside was now the one they needed most. And even though they had never said thank you before, their eyes were full of something deeper now. Regret, respect, and maybe, just maybe, love that had come too late. Muna sat alone that evening in her apartment, thinking deeply. Her parents had come to her not with pride, but with fear and empty hands. They had lost everything, their house, their peace, and their son who had disappeared without a word. Muna didn't feel angry. She didn't want to punish them, but she also knew she had to be wise. Helping them again blindly would only repeat the past. This time, things had to be different. She pulled out her checkbook and quietly wrote an amount that would clear the loan, pay the hospital bills, and give them a new start. It was a big sum, but she didn't hesitate. Money wasn't the issue. Respect was. Trust was. She had given both before, and they were thrown away. Now she needed to protect herself, not with anger, but with boundaries. With the check, she added a typed letter. It had 3 clear conditions. The first, her parents would move into a new apartment, one she would pay for, but it would be in her name. No more family drama, no more shared control. The second, the house title deed, once saved from auction, would be transferred directly to Muna. She had built that home with her sacrifices, and now she would legally own it. The third, all family assets, from property to finances, would now fall under her legal management. This wasn't about power, it was about protecting peace. She printed the letter, placed it in a neat envelope, and sealed it with calm hand. The next day, when her parents returned to her office, she handed it to them with the check. Her father read it slowly. Her mother looked at Muna, surprised, maybe even hurt at first. But Muna's face didn't show anger. It showed strength, the kind that comes from being burned and learning how not to catch fire again. She spoke softly and clearly. This is not revenge. This is order. If I help, I need to make sure we never return to what broke us. There was silence in the room, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was clear. Her parents nodded. They understood now. This daughter, the one they had forgotten, ignored, pushed aside, was not just helping them again. She was leading the family now, and this time, she was doing it on her terms. 6 months passed, and the house that was once filled with pain had changed completely. Muna had repaired it, repainted it, and turned it into something new, not just a home, but a symbol of her journey. Her name was now written clearly on the gate, a name that was once forgotten inside those same walls. She planned a dinner, not to show off, but to celebrate a new chapter. But this dinner was different. It wasn't filled with relatives or old family members. The guests were women from shelters, young girls who had once been told they weren't enough, and students who Muna had quietly supported with scholarships. These were people who, like her, had been overlooked, pushed aside, or forgotten. Now, they sat at a long table, laughing, eating, and feeling like they belonged. The house was full of joy that night, not fake smiles, but real warmth. There was no tension, no judgment, no old wounds being opened, just peace, kindness, and respect. People walked through the home and noticed how carefully Muna had designed everything. Simple, calm, and full of heart. It didn't just look beautiful, it felt safe. Someone asked her quietly, "Why isn't your family here?" Muna looked around at the smiling faces, the girls helping one another with their food, the women sharing stories without fear. Then she smiled and said softly, "Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shows up when the vein runs dry." That sentence stayed with everyone in the room. Muna didn't need to explain more. The ones who needed to understand already did. Her parents were not invited, not out of hate, but because she had learned that not everyone deserves a seat at your table just because they share your last name. She had built this home from pain, but filled it with purpose. The girls she sponsored hugged her tightly that night. The women she helped looked at her with respect. And Muna, for the first time in a long while, felt full, not with anger or sadness, but with quiet joy. That dinner wasn't just a party. It was proof that healing is possible, that you can rebuild, that you can create a new kind of family, one made not of blood, but of love, loyalty, and presence. And Muna had done exactly that. Muna knew her story was not just her own. There were many girls out there like her, daughters who gave everything, yet were treated like they were nothing. Girls who were told to sacrifice, stay silent, and disappear when they were no longer needed. Muna decided she wouldn't let their stories end the way hers almost did. So she started something bigger than herself, a foundation called Muna's Table. It wasn't just about giving money. It was about giving voice, support, and safety to girls who had been forgotten by the very people they loved most. She provided housing for those kicked out of their homes, scholarships for girls who dropped out of school to care for sick parents, and counseling for those who were broken from being unappreciated. She made sure no girl ever had to feel as invisible as she once did. One day, a giant billboard appeared on the highway near her old neighborhood. On it was Muna's calm, confident face and one powerful line: Muna's table, where every girl has a seat. No one could ignore it. No one could deny what she had built. People asked her, "Is this your way of getting revenge?" She would shake her head and answer gently, "No, this is not revenge. This is protection. This is healing." She didn't want to hurt anyone. She just wanted to help those who still had a chance to rise. She wasn't driven by hate. She was moved by hope. Muna didn't shout about what had been done to her. She didn't drag anyone's name through the mud. Instead, she used her story to light the way for others. She didn't rewrite the past. She rewrote what it meant to be a daughter. She built a legacy, not from bitterness but from belief, that daughters are not servants, not backups, not second choices. They are strength. They are leaders. They are enough. And now, through her foundation, Muna was making sure the world knew it too. One girl at a time, one seat at a time, one healed heart at a time. If Muna's story touched your heart, don't scroll past. Tag a daughter who deserves the world. Share this with someone who's always been the silent strength in their family. Repost to remind the world. Being overlooked doesn't mean being powerless. And if you are a Muna, never forget, your quiet strength is louder than you think. Let's build more tables where every girl has a seat.